Hi, my name is Jonathan, and we're going to play a little game called Do You Live in a Democracy or Not? So I'll ask you a series of questions. I'm here to help you to take a personal inventory of whether or not you live in a democracy. So the first series of questions is related to if you work full-time or part-time. Full-time or part-time. If you work, do you have a say in who's hired or fired? Do you have a say in how the capital is used? How the business or agency you work for uses their money or profits? Do you have a say in how that money is used? Do you have a say in how much you get paid? Do you have a say in any or in all managerial decisions? Okay, if you work. Now, if you're in school, do you have a say in the curriculum that is used? Do you have a say in how you're graded as a student? Do you have a say in how school funds are used? Now, if you answered no to any of these questions, then you are not living in a nation that's a democracy. Okay. Now, what good is a democracy at the macro level if you're not living in a democracy every day? Like, that nation becomes a democracy in name only. If you're not living democratically throughout the day, you're living in a nation that's a democracy in name only. Like, you're divorcing democratic freedom from your own reality. If a teacher, a supervisor, or a manager, or a business owner is making most of the decisions for you, then your daily reality is obviously living under fascism and not democracy. You obviously are barred from participating in democracy at both the state level and national level if you don't participate in democracy in your daily life. If you're not living democratically in school or at your work, then democracy is divorced from your reality and you're not living in democracy. Like, democracy is fundamentally economic and only secondarily political. Like, you don't vote at the ballot box 40 hours a day. It doesn't take you 40 hours a week. It doesn't take you 40 hours a week to vote at the ballot box. You only do that once every 4 years. So democracy is inherently economic. Like, you are going to school or working 40 hours a week. So that's why democracy is economic primarily and only secondarily political. Democracy is owning your work. You personally having ownership of the business you work for and owning everything used to operate that business. That is democracy. And yes, I am talking about socialism. I am an anarcho-socialist. Specifically an anarchist, which is a spectrum of socialism. On the socialism spectrum, I am an anarchist. But socialism is not government owning the place you work. It's not government ownership. Socialism is you owning your work. You owning the business you work for. You owning your school. That is socialism. So I'm not talking about a free-for-all, do whatever you want. But I'm talking about collective decisions with your peers. Like, your fellow peers, your fellow workers, your fellow students. With owning your own business, owning where you work, owning your school, you are accountable to your peers with decisions you make. You're not accountable in living democratically in your school and in your work. You're not accountable to a supervisor, or business owner, manager, or teacher. You are accountable to your peers with making collective decisions in a democracy. Otherwise, you're living under fascism. Whether it's making such radical decisions in the structure of your work or school, it's patronizing for the establishment to say you most likely make the most selfish decision in a economic democracy or a academic democracy. Like, the establishment might say, well, if people are going to have such radical decisions, they're going to make the most selfish decisions. But that's not the case because, or they would say you need formal training in order to make these decisions you would make in an economic democracy. But that is patronizing, and you can be trusted to make the best decisions for your immediate community. Even if you're like in the 2nd grade, making such radical decisions, or wherever you work, even a very low entry-level job like cashier, janitor, or whatever, you can be trusted as an equal human being to a manager, to a business owner. You can be trusted to make a decision that's best for your immediate community. In a democracy, all men are created equal. And that is true in school. You as a student are equal with your teacher. And in your workplace, you as a entry-level employee are equal with the shareholders and are equal with business owners. Okay. And it takes more work to be a student and a worker democratically because it requires critical thinking and being multitasked and involves greater responsibility. So socialism is more compatible with a Protestant work ethic than capitalism because it takes more work to be a socialist. It takes more work as an individual. It takes more personal responsibility to be a socialist than it does living in a capitalist society. So if you put your soul into what you're working on, then it is yours. Your work is yours if you put your soul into it. And if a manager or a business owner or a supervisor says you have no right to take ownership of your work or the business, then they are essentially stealing from you. If you are existentially alienated from your work, then that means you are no better than a slave. And slaves get compensation for their work with shelter and food. They still get compensation as slaves. And that's not much different than you're working at an entry-level job. And if you say, but I can leave anytime I want to, working wherever, unlike a slave, you're saying to yourself, I can leave anytime. But that is not true. If you're living in a capitalist economy, capitalist society, you cannot just leave because you will not get unemployment compensation and you will not have a very minimal to nil social safety net if you just leave your job. So you are a slave in a capitalist society, living in a capitalist economy. And maybe you'd say that democracy is meant to be strictly political and not economic. But then you'd agree that freedom of choice in the free market is one of the benefits of living in democracy. So there you go. So there is an economic component. You are agreeing that there is an economic component to democracy. So, if you have the freedom to choose what you buy, whether it's a type of deodorant, type of bread, or whatever, if you have the freedom to choose which product, then you should have the freedom to decide how that product is marketed. This is an marketing egalitarianly. Just the free market, everyone who works in the business, that business is involved in free market. It's egalitarian. Everyone decides how it's marketed, public relations, just everything. Everyone participates in all the roles. It's not stratified. A business should not be stratified. It should not be specialized. They're made to be in a socialist economy. There can be mild specialization, but in a socialist economy, everyone is involved in all the components of a business. Paracon, participatory economy, paracon. Remember that word. So deciding how your employer's profits are used, which is socialism in essence, still utilizes the free market because the worker collective that makes the best use of profits succeeds. And it's decided on an egalitarian level instead of in a hierarchy. Hierarchy bad, okay? Maybe you'd respond, but that's not how our system works. You see, our system works this way, that way, and our system cannot work that way, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe you're saying that. But and you give some intelligent reason for just trashing my socialist ideology, socialist philosophy. But you are so smart that you're stupid. Because what I'm describing is very basic sociology. Leading your own life with what you do with most of your life, working. That's essentially what I'm talking about. You lead your own life. You decide what your life is going to look like. You self-determination. You decide for yourself the trajectory of your life, what your life is going to look like, by deciding what your work life will look like, what your career will look like, in every capacity of what your career looks like. That is democracy, that is freedom. So if you refuse to challenge your fascist daily reality and live in a capitalist society, not owning your business, not owning your work, and at the same time claiming to live in a nation that's a democracy, then you're the one who's an idealist. That is all I'm going to say. I love you. Thank you.